Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Majority Show, Scotland's number one politics and chat from an anti-nationalist perspective. I am the host, Mark Devlin, and we are going out tonight on YouTube and Facebook and Twitter, now called X, and we are glad to have you along with us. I'm here tonight with the co-hosts, Mark Zegfeld and Mary Devlin. How are you both today?
I'm fine, thanks. I've been enjoying the sun, the late summer sun in the garden, so it's been good.
Right, and what are you going to be talking about tonight?
I'm going to talk about the anti-Semitism in the Scottish national cause.
Right. Well, it certainly is a big problem. And Mary, how are you doing today?
I'm doing very well. I would like to have been out enjoying the sun, but I've been here working in the studio.
And what are you going to be talking about tonight?
Well, tonight I'm going to be talking about how the Greens stink with their cash for access and new business tax rate for grocery stores.
Right. And of course, we'll all be talking about the 10-year anniversary of the Do You Want to Break Up the UK referendum?
And of course, we have Zoomer of the Week.
All right. So we'll be back with all that and much more in just a moment. Right, okay, welcome back to Scotland's number one politics chat from anti-nationalist perspective. The Majority's aim is a thriving Scotland without the toxic nationalism that has been strangling Scotland's potential. Yes, it is still no, John, well said. Okay, where are we at now? Double-sided pages this today.
That's going to get you tonight.
Here tonight, of course, with Mark Zegfeld and Mary Devlin. And as always, huge thanks to our friends at UK Union Voice and United Against Separation Facebook pages, where many of you are watching from tonight.
And remember, caring is sharing. The number one thing you can do is to like the show on YouTube. Even if you don't subscribe, please drop a like. And if you can subscribe, please do so. Increase our reach at the click of a button. And as usual, I'm going to be managing all the comments tonight. So please keep them short and snappy, and I'll try to put as many up on screen as I can. Thank you.
Right, okay, we'll just get straight into it. I'm going to talk today, I suppose, 18th of September 2024, is the 10th anniversary of the so-called Scottish independence referendum. Tonight, we're not going to look back that much. I think we did quite a bit of that last week, so please look at last week's show, where we talked to our Salmond and Sturgeon. We were talking about the experiences of the referendum and their career failures, I suppose, up until that time. Hi, James, thank you for coming along. But so really what we're going to talk about the lies that the so-called independence movement continues to tell. Some of these are about the past, of course, and some of these are about the future. And I think the first one, and I think this really has to be addressed, and it's not really something that many people have taken on board too much, really, but the very fact that it is called a independence referendum to begin with. Yeah. And in fact, it was a breakup the UK referendum. This framing makes a huge difference in many ways, I think, because I think it's a big success from the Nationalists to have framed this referendum as an independence referendum. People are told that the referendum is about Scottish independence, then they think, especially if they've watched a little bit of Braveheart, they might think, well, those plucky Scots are going to, fight the power and break away. And of course, they've got a right to their own country. And as well as that, I think most people will think, well, that's surely a decision for the Scots to make and for them alone. But if it's a referendum on breaking up the UK, the perception is entirely different. Not only are the stakes much higher, the territorial, economic, social and cultural integrity of the UK would be forever diminished. I think it's supposed to be military in there as well. Military integrity of the UK would be forever diminished. Of course, that's an aside. As an aside, that's why Russia, of course, supports independence, and they put their bots out to support that, which has been well documented. But this is key. When you make this referendum about breaking up the UK, then surely it's not just Scots who get a voice. Surely it should be everyone in the UK should then get a part of that decision anyway. So I actually think this is a kind of form of nationalist greed. They basically they determined the form of the question, of the framing of the referendum, and then said, but only we can have a decision. It's only us. Scots can decide whether to break up the UK, and only Scots. And to me, that's a form of exceptionalism. I think that's really ridiculous. I think this is the big thing. We have to think, it's still every article today we see in the news it's got independence referendum. Maybe that's its official name, perhaps. But the reality is this breakup of the UK. And I think if UK politicians, particularly like David Cameron at the time, had realised more this was a breakup of the UK referendum, then perhaps it might have been different. Mark, what do you think of all that?
I personally think we should never have had a referendum in the first place.
Well, that's
because
very true.
Because we are one country. We all knew it was going to be a divisive vote. I think I don't like referendums anyway. I didn't like the EU referendum, even though I voted to leave and I wanted to leave. I don't think decisions should be done through referendum. We vote in a government to do this. The constitution is with the Westminster government. A referendum was always going to turn out like this. Whoever won, it was going to be divisive and it was going to go on and on and on. And 10 years later, we're still talking about it. And who suffers? The people of Scotland have suffered because of it, because we haven't concentrated on the issues that we need to concentrate, that have got a lot worse over the last 10 years, like education, like the austerity that the SNP have brought in, the local governments, the NHS. These are far more important issues than an independence vote, in my opinion. And I think we've forgot about them, and it's been non-stop independence, independence, independence. And that, in my view, was Westminster's fault. They should have said, no, sorry, there's no breakup of this country. We are not going to vote on this. You don't have the numbers. You do not have the. They never had. We've got to remember.
It doesn't really matter.
The numbers.
But I mean, what are you talking about? What do you mean numbers? I mean, okay, even if they had a majority in Scotland, that's still a minority across the entire UK. And, fashions come and go. And what are we to say? That if a separatist movement anywhere in the UK, it could be any of Scotland, Cornwall, Wales, whatever, if they get enough support in their local area, they can destroy the whole UK. I mean, that argument was tested, for example, in the United States. They ended up having a civil war over it. And so they end up making it basically an indivisibility clause. And France, for example, has that as well. It's this idea, they also have come up with this thing, independence is normal. In fact, it's not that normal. Most countries are made up from other countries.
States.
And, look at Germany, it's full of, had an empire in there and
my
all
answer
kinds
to
of
that,
other things.
My answer to that is always the UK is an independent country.
Well, that's a good point. But the thing is that these things all came together because they were warring factions basically for such a long time anyway. And so I think the last 10 years shows what happens if a country is trapped in a constitutional battle, or at least a part of the country is is in that. But still we've got this idea that goes around that Scots could get a referendum if a certain number of if a certain amount of polling happens. People will be banding around. Well, of course, Nicola Sturgeon says 60% for a sustained period. You're like, well, our country isn't up for auction to bent polling companies. It really isn't. This is ridiculous.
Given the polls that have come out in the last few years, we can tell that polls cannot be trusted.
No, basically can't be trusted, right? And so he's persist with this idea that somehow Scots are entitled to have this, referendum, as someone mentioned in the comments there, every 5 years or a generation, and this nonsense about be like that. I know. So I think basically the UK should pass an indivisibility law and basically say that devolved legislatures would be abolished if they continue to advocate for separation. That is not what they are for. The UK government suggested that that was a suggestion, I think, from what's the guy who was the Secretary of State. He suggested and rolled it back quite quickly after criticism. Anyway, but just basically, I think there should be penalties. That's what it comes down to. Penalties for devolved legislatures. If they start making independence papers and all that, just close it down for 3 months, right? And close it down for a while.
We wouldn't miss them.
Oh, you wouldn't miss them. That's the thing. But that's the part of the point, isn't it? You wouldn't actually miss them. I mean, do you think there should be more action taken by the UK government to close this all down?
Yeah, because they get money to run our public services. Now, if they're spending that money, taxpayers' money, on things that are outside of public services, like these papers, independence papers, to me, that's a criminal. That's fraud, in my opinion, because that's not what the money's meant to be. The money's meant to be paid onto our public services. They were devolved. They should never, ever have been allowed to be called a government. They are not a government. They are an administration, a devolved administration to run our public services. That's what devolution was meant to be. It's meant to give more power to Scotland to run our public services. These foreign offices, the money to Gaza, all these money that reserve powers. That to me is fraud, and that to me. That's where the UK government should be jumping in and saying, you are committing fraud with taxpayers' money against the Scottish people. And that's what, but they're too scared to do that. Why? I don't know.
Well, they were too scared. I think at some point in over these 10 years, there was, especially after the referendum, there was some momentum on the nationalist side, certainly. And I think some fear was warranted. Of course, they should never let it get to that point. But it's dissipated now, and now is the time to have more constitutional clarity, perhaps. I'm saying a clarity act, I'm against that. I mean clarity in the sense of this is one country. We don't start, breaking it up based on polling or based on a bunch of people in one part of the country what say they want to leave. Tough. Tough. Spend your time, get another hobby. Do something else. That's not what we do here. And that's exactly what the people in the United States would say. Get another hobby. And people in France would say, no, what are you doing? Or Japan, wherever it is. Just no, don't do that.
Well, Spain locked them up, didn't they, when they held
that's right, exactly.
They locked them up and said it was against the Constitution of Spain. And they said they couldn't have a referendum. They held one. They were told that they would face legal consequences. And they were arrested and locked up for having one.
Yep. Quite right. I mean, this is the thing. Basically, all that thing about when you swear in as a politician, you're supposed to say, "I plan to uphold the Constitution of the UK and protect it from enemies and all this type of stuff." Well, you can't do that and then say you're going to break up the country. I think it's ridiculous. And I think just to say a little bit more about the Parliament, I think the mistake as well was to make it a legislative body. There was no need for the Scottish Parliament to be able to discuss laws at all. Just absolutely no need for it. It could have been done at a regional level or even at local authority level, and the money could have been dispersed in local authority. In fact, all you need to do is have a meeting of the local authorities every quarter. I mean, that's all that would have been enough.
And we can see the results of the legislation that they've tried to pass. It's all been absolute, I would say a joke, but it's not a funny joke.
No, it's not at all. Right, now, other revision. Another one I want to deal with here is that it was close. That's what they like to say. Oh, it was close. I don't think so. 45% to 55% is not a closed vote. It means that 22% more Scots voted to remain in the UK than voted to leave. In any other election, this would be a huge amount. Now, they think it was big because it was bigger than they expected at the beginning of the campaign. And since then, they've been thinking, what we can do is we can have another referendum. Or if we say there's going to be another referendum, then what's going to happen is that we'll get more support. And I think that's a pretty good reason not to have that. It's kind of catch-22, I suppose. They can't get the support they want without the promise of a referendum, but they can't get a referendum without the support. So what have we got here? So they continue to go on with this inevitability myth Here, I know what's going on here because it's printed in double-sided. Okay, that's what it is. Right. Okay. Fine. And that's before. I mean, what do you think of this, Mark? This idea that just this continuous agitation, the never ending. It's
Well,
just
the facts and figures don't bear that out. If they keep banging on about polls, and but if you look at the polls over the last 10 years, they've never got more than even in their own polls, their own biased polls, they've never got more
the
than
ones they paid for.
45. Yeah, the ones they paid for. They never get more than 45%. They apparently have hit 50% twice in the last 10 years, and that was their own biased
yes.
polls
That was like Ipsos or Find It Now polls.
So the facts don't bear this out. Even their own facts don't bear this out.
Yeah.
So
I worked it out for a post I did during the week there. I think it was in the past 70 polls. There were 10 polls that showed yes in the lead. Of those 10, 7 were from Ipsos and Find Out Now, which were completely biased towards the SNP. So basically, talking about 3 polls in 2 out of 70 polls where the yes was ahead. Obviously outliers considering the situation now. Mark.
So that just tells you, doesn't it, that this inevitable lie is just that, a lie. And if you look now, I think that they're further away from gaining independence. If we had another referendum tomorrow, which I don't want another one ever, but if we had another one tomorrow, they would lose. They would lose again,
absolutely,
without a doubt. And
they would lose worse if they had another one now.
Yeah. And this idea as well, they keep saying about the government, the SNP. Well, we keep getting a nationalist government voted into Holyrood. They get voted in by 30-odd% of the poll. The vote. That's all they get is 30-odd% of the vote.
Yes,
and they win the election. That's not enough to say the country suddenly wants independence whatsoever. So it's just lies and propaganda. That's all
it really is. I mean, that's the thing. This all seems to be driven so much by polling, right? And this polling is so biased. I mean, just for example, we've got the yes, no. Almost every poll is yes, no. That's not even going to be. That wouldn't even be the question. The question would be leave remain. That takes 7% immediately off the vote. And then the next polling earlier this week says that basically, if you say to people, do you want independence, but you lose the pound, it goes down to 33%. That's what independence in a pound. Well, if you want to leave the UK and lose the pound, well, what you end up with 30%, less than 30%. I think we're going to see numbers going to that. And I think it's actually criminal to some extent for polling companies and the media who purchase these polls to continue with this yes-no question, because it's something that won't be used. So I think this is the thing we need to stop. We need to stop this media onslaught on us, actually, because the media is just quite a lot responsible to this because they've been continually pushing this idea to get hits and likes because everyone knows it sells. I think. Now, Mark,
just before you go
ahead.
I haven't got them to hand, but there have been a couple of comments tonight about the BBC and the STV and about how they're being so biased.
Right. Well, they get paid. They get paid revenue by the Scottish government, advertisement revenue by the Scottish government, and with STV, it comes into millions.
Yes, it does.
Millions and millions. So they obviously are not going to go against the Scottish government on this topic. So they're not representing the viewers, and they're not representing Scotland. They're just representing the Scottish government with the ad because they're getting paid to. That's. I don't even watch them. I refuse to watch them because they're so biased.
Well, the thing is, you can get your news in different places now. Anyway, I mean, okay. I just want to ask a question. If you're listening to the show, and if you can tell me, Mary, if in the chat, if her level is okay and you can hear okay, that would be great. Maybe you can just give me an update when anyone gives.
Well, maybe I have to say something so people can.
Right. Well, there is that. You just seem a little bit quiet to me, so
okay.
That's why.
Well, let us know, please.
Okay. Next up, Mark. Do you have any revisionist history that you don't like?
Civic and Joyous. this word that
Okay,
it was civic and joyous. There was nothing civic and joyous about the referendum. It was nasty. It was at times went way over the top. The lies were absolutely outstanding. Was incredible, and I think that's been carried on for the last 10 years, and that's what we're not a civic and joyous nation when it comes down to this. We're more divided now than I've ever seen, and I think we're more divided now than we have been since God knows, decades and decades and decades.
It seems like they took a lot of existing splits and then made them even stronger. Sectarianism, for example, amplified that. Political divide amplified that. If you're not voting for nationalism, you're a traitor, a quisling, all this type of stuff. I mean, if you don't go to the Scottish football match and wave a saltire, you're not a true Scot. This kind of thing. If you criticise the Scottish government, you're not Scottish. You're a Tory, English Tory. All these type of things. These are still going around right now, right? Yeah. I mean, they go around. You see, get called out. Some was called a little Englander yesterday.
Yeah. Well, I often get told, "What are you sticking your nose into Scottish affairs for when you're obviously not born in Scotland?" I get that quite often. Get that.
How would they know where you
But
were
as
born?
I said at the beginning, this is the breakup of the UK is a matter for everyone in the UK. It's not a matter for just for Scots. And I get this. This is another thing that bugs me. I've mentioned this before. Is when you go on to, there's been stories. For example, you go in the Daily Mail or something like that, and it says about Scottish independence. There's always some English folk on there going, "Oh yeah, but we should just get rid of them. If they don't want us." And I'm like, look. So you want Sturgeon in Salmond, and you just have to win. Is that the way you treat all your political opponents? You want them to just give them exactly what they want and abandon the people who are fighting against them? And what for? So you can get a bit more tax money? I mean, really? Come on, be serious. So the problem is nationalism begets nationalism. And these Scottish nationalists, of course, they want more English nationalism. So to rise up and then to annoy the English so much that they let them go. But we have to not let that happen. Anyway, we will have a quick. Yes, Anglophobia is a disaster here. Anyway, right, we'll have a quick break and we'll come back. We'll talk about wishful thinking from Alex Salmond and Nicola Sturgeon. Please do like and subscribe to the show. We love the likes. And also, the majority survives entirely on donations from people just like you. You viewers out there, thank you all for doing so. If you get value from the show, please do consider a donation. Every donation, big or small, helps our fight against toxic nationalism. We have to gear up for the next Holyrood election. We don't know when that is. It might be earlier. You never know.
Could be anytime.
It could be any time. And anyway, 2026 isn't that far away, to be honest. What month is it? Can you remember?
We could have
June.
two. We could have two.
Oh, that's right. Why did you read that? Why do they have to have another one in 2026?
Because it's set 5 years set parliament, so by the law you have to have 2026 has to be an election.
Haven't we suffered enough? I mean, really, it's bad enough just having one election, whatever. Oh God. Anyway, and it shouldn't be 5 years anyway. But that's one of the things. First thing that should be put in place. We will be fighting for that anyway. Please donate. Go to our website. You can click the button on the right-hand side of every page. One-time or monthly donation, everything is appreciated. Or if you're on YouTube, you can leave a super sticker or super thanks, which would really be great. Okay, thank you. Now, what have we got here? Come back. Let's have a look at some of the headlines that have been doing the rounds in the past few days, starting with Alex Salmond. Well, what's he doing? Alex Salmond is blaming Nicola Sturgeon for 10 years wasted on independence. Right. Well, I wonder really who's to blame for this. Anyway, who hired What's her name? Nicola Sturgeon in the first place, and who made her the deputy? Anyway, I just wonder about these kind
Who
of questions.
groomed her?
Yeah, groomed
for many years.
Let's not talk about that too much. Starting with Alex, anyway, so he said he would not have resigned knowing how the past 10 years had turned out. He also said the Scottish Parliament's reputation had weakened since his leadership, arguing efficient governance was crucial to the future of independence. That he says there has been 10 wasted years as far as independence is concerned. And he said the Scottish government should have strategised better on Scotland's place after the UK's exit from the European Union, including ensuring the country remained in a single market alongside Northern Ireland. As far as I remember, though, the SNP abstained from the Brexit confirmation vote, ensuring hard Brexit. Anyway, now, isn't it a bit much, Mark Salmond, to be coming out the gate now saying it was 10 years wasted on Sturgeon?
Yeah, well, it's he could have said it's 10 years wasted on talking about a vote, independence, when they haven't respected the vote. 10 years, it is 10 years wasted. We have wasted 10 years.
Yeah.
We wasted 10 years on this subject when we could have been talking and sorting issues out that devolution was meant to sort out. We've had bad legislation, we've had bad laws. So whose fault is that? It's the government of the day, the SNP. So, and he was the leader of the SNP.
Is he trying this thing, this king over the water type thing, where he's like, it was really, I'm the true heir of this, and these are the usurpers who've got in the way, and I shall return and strike a mighty blow to them, and Scotland shall be free. All this kind of, that's what it sounds like to me a little bit.
I'd like to ask him what he thinks would have changed if he'd have stayed, because he lost the referendum by a big margin. So what would change? He had to go. He left because he lost.
And the UK government would just have been able to say to him, look, you lost this. What's your legitimacy? Anytime you said anything about the referendum, they would just have said, you lost. In fact, we can say that now to him. You lost, and you're a loser, the biggest loser, in more ways than one, perhaps.
He's trying to act like the boss who's like, oh, I tried to delegate to the staff, but, if you want something done, do it yourself, type of thing.
Well, there is that. Anyway, would he have been able to? I don't think he would have been able to attract, for good or bad, I don't think he'd be able to attract the mass voters that Nicola Sturgeon would have been able to attract. And certainly seen as someone who's lost a referendum, Sturgeon didn't really have that on her plate, and she was able to, take advantage of the media perhaps in a better way than he could. Not ultimately that failed. Also, would he have been able to? He would have had to deal with the Greens at some point anyway, probably.
I think he knew, and I think I remember him saying this, that he took it as far as he could take it, and that's why he resigned. For now to turn around and say, well, I could have got us independence within the 10 years, or I could have done better, is changing what he said in 2014.
Yeah. Well, what I was saying in Twitter was, the patron saints of the independence movement are coulda, woulda, and shoulda. So, that's what it feels like. This seems to me a little bit like sour grapes. Very sour, very, very sour grapes. It's like you can't, I was so great, but they took it all away from me, and now you really want me back. It's needy, actually, in a way as well. Now, he also said the SNP and Alba, I'm just going to call them Alba, none of this Alba nonsense. Alba should put aside their differences and form a pro-independence alliance at the 2026 Holyrood elections. Basically, he wants to game the election. He says, the only way, in my estimation, you can get an independence majority in the next Scottish Parliament is if Alba substantially gains on the list vote. People usually ask, will Scotland be independent in the next 10 years? My answer is yes. I think we have to make a move forward at the Scottish elections. If we get an independence majority, that should bring matters to a head as quickly as we can. So it smacks of desperation, Mark.
It certainly is, because he knows his party get less than a percentage of the votes they get.
Less than 12,000 votes.
Yeah, so he knows as a party they're a joke, they're finished, they're completely irrelevant. So he wants to try and maybe jump onto the SNP and get the SNP to vote for him as well. But I think the SNP have a big struggle on themselves on keeping a vote or even not losing votes, because they're in such dire trouble themselves. I don't think it makes any difference. I think they're going to lose, and they're going to lose big in 2026. I don't think they'll be the biggest party in Holyrood, or at least they will not have the majority. And I think if the Labour and Conservatives work together, one of them will be the First Minister, and I believe it will probably be the Labour one.
Sure. Oh, it's likely.
Interesting comment from Alan Cameron. He says if he can bankrupt them, then that will be the best thing he has ever done.
That does make some sense.
He might actually end up bankrupting them.
Yes, yeah, it makes some sense, because that basically means the party ceased to exist, and then what goes into the void. But like in the general election, 12,000 people, fewer than 12,000 people voted for him, and as we like to keep pointing out, he didn't even vote for his own party. So that just shows you just a kind of like, I'm just here for the pies. I mean, that's the vibe.
Just trying to stay relevant.
Yeah, and try to stay irrelevant, perhaps. I mean, really, that's the level of it. This idea that they can somehow, that they're so entitled, aren't they? That's what it comes down to. They're so full of this idea of their noble cause that they are entitled to anything that comes their way. Just that they can do whatever they like. Let's take a little trip back memory lane and have a listen to this Alex Salmond. This maybe is a slightly different Alex Salmond from the one we see today.
Scotland has, by majority, decided not at this stage to become an independent country. I accept that verdict of the people, and I call on all of Scotland to follow suit in accepting the democratic verdict of the people of Scotland.
Well, there's a word for a person who says one thing and then does another. One word certainly is liar. It's disingenuous, someone mentioned earlier on. Hypocrite, very good, Mary. Yes, it's quite a lot of words for that type of thing. And basically the thing is, we have this situation now where they went back in their word almost straight away. And how can you trust these people? I don't think you can trust them. They say, oh, well, this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, but you're still alive, Alex. Right? And, if it's once in a lifetime, okay, we'll wait till you're dead then. Anyway, and he says, oh, I think I'll get another independence referendum in my lifetime. Well, you've not got very much long by the looks of it, to be honest. So when is it going to happen? Where are you going to go? 12,000 votes? Where are all these votes going to come from? I mean, it just seems, I don't know, we see this mass desperation. Here's the National. Scots would vote yes in new Indie Ref. And then you look down, if a return to the EU is a certainty. You're like, but wait a minute, that's not a certainty. Not even remotely a certainty.
If pigs were flying in the sky.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing, okay, if everyone, got a brain implant and their partners became supermodels, okay, whatever, this is become a genius and all this, yeah, maybe. Of course you'd vote for whatever. But, I mean, that's nonsense.
Is that what you're looking for, Mark, a supermodel?
No, not me. I'm content. I'm just saying some people might go for that, in the case of ridiculous offers that people are giving. All that is right. No, let's move on to Nicola Sturgeon. Here she is today. Now, okay, I don't know much of this I can stand, so let's see how we'll go.
What kind of responsibility do you take for the result that the SNP suffered?
Well, look, I take my fair share, and that's a big share of responsibility given the positions I've held in the SNP, not just in my years as leader, but as deputy leader before that. I'll never try to evade that responsibility. But, I won every election I fought as SNP leader. The recent election, I wasn't SNP leader. So, equally, there, are other sort of factors that have to be taken into account there as well.
Police sirens in the background.
They're coming to get you, Nicola.
Clearly when any party loses an election, it doesn't exactly help them progress the objectives that they have. But I believe that support for independence remains strong. I mean, not just headline support, but you look underneath the bonnet of independence support and you find, amongst younger age groups, support at 60, 70%. The demographics of independence support are strong. So there is a need to continue to build the case, build the argument, have a degree of patience that perhaps...
Right, forget about all that nonsense. Right, okay. I really don't like
actually
this.
take any of that in.
Well, I don't really like this expression "under the bonnet." It just sounds really weird to me. Having lived in the States, it should be under the hood, irrespective of which country you're in. Let's see. She seems to think this has been going round the rounds this past couple of days that the young people, the kids are all for us. So 63% of under 35s apparently in dodgy polling would vote for independence, according to the SNP, and that gives it some kind of inevitability. But it really doesn't do that at all. Since the referendum, since 2014, sad to say, but 500,000 older Scots died, many of whom would have voted no. So you think, okay, they all died. So why isn't the SNP roaring away with the results? Because the vast majority of Scots, young and old, don't want it. That's the basic truth. They just don't want it. We have other priorities, as Mark said. And, anytime, this is important, I think, anytime someone mentions independence, it's basically a code word for, I'm not going to do anything to help you with the problems right now. Do you believe that, Mark?
Yeah, I certainly do. And this idea, and she says it often, it's something that winds me up, is this idea, well, I won elections.
Right.
You won an election to be the first minister of a devolved administration. That was not a question on independence. It was a question on who runs our public services. And this idea, I won elections. You won elections with 30% of the vote. You only won elections because we split the vote with Conservatives, Labour, and Liberals. It's something that has been an issue, I think, with devolution for quite a long time. They keep sneaking in with these 30-odd%. So that is not, you're not winning elections because you're the most popular person in the country. You're far from it.
Yes, they didn't have a majority. They didn't even have a majority in the last election anyway, right? But they still got all the seats, which is a failure in the system.
Yeah, the system is broken. The system definitely needs changing. And this idea of youngsters voting for independence, well, the counting 16-year-olds in that vote. The 16-year-olds, in my view, would not have a vote. If we ever had a second referendum, they would not get the vote. So I don't agree with this idea that youngsters want independence, because, for one, you said it, they don't. If you look at all these independence marches that go on, do you see any youngsters in them?
There's no youngsters. No. There's no young blood in the party. There really isn't, and that's interesting. And I think
everyone's over 65.
And I think, even this other thing is 60% actually isn't a big number. That's only a 10% shift that needs to take place as people grow older or are exposed to reality. And I think this could probably be done. Probably make that shift done in an afternoon by putting Sturgeon speeches on repeat in every high school in Scotland. That would just turn the whole thing, I think. Anyway, 10 years on. Oh, Mary, you've got a wee bit to say here.
Oh, I have no idea where it is.
Right. This is you. You're going to kind of close. This is kind of close. Mary's going to kind of close this section.
Well, I think what I was going to talk about was basically we're 10 years on, but there's still no answers or any kind of coherent plan on a lot of the issues which are extremely important still to people. For example, currency, pensions, mortgages, borders, trade. If you can't come up with good answers in 10 years, it means there are no good answers. Mm-hmm. Only the truth that Scotland would face worse austerity than Greece. We would be in an absolute financial meltdown. And older people realised this, and that's why they voted no. They were old enough to realise that there were no answers to any of these questions. And I can tell you now that nobody is going to be marking the 20-year anniversary of the vote. In another 10 years' time, the whole nationalist movement will just be an embarrassing chapter in 21st century British history. We won't be here in 10 years talking about it.
Well, hopefully not, because that would mean another 10 years of never-ending.
It's dead now.
Okay, well done, Mary. The reality, of course, is that it wasn't lies or MI5 or any kind of other nonsense that swung the vote. It was the people of Scotland themselves who rejected greedy, divisive nationalism that was pushed on us by incompetent chancellors. And so we salute you all. We're going to take a break, and we'll come back to Mark Zegveld, who will be talking about nationalists' open anti-Semitism. See you in a second. All right, Mark, you're up.
Yeah, we have in my view, we have a real serious problem that's developed over time in Scotland. I think to be fair, it's a problem, I think, for the whole UK, but especially in Scotland at the moment with anti-Semitism. We have people from the nationalist side, shall we say, leading figures openly making anti-Semitic comments, absolute disgusting ones. I'll start off with Craig Murray. I think do you have it there, Mark?
Yep.
The post.
That's it there. There.
What is
you can just read it out, or you're not going to read it
out. I'll read it out. I don't want a two-state solution. I want a single-state Palestine, from the river to the sea, in which everyone is equal, and I want the apartheid terrorist state of Israel to be abolished completely. Well, if you look at that in sections, the first one, he wants it to be everyone to be equal, but he only wants a one-state solution. That doesn't make sense for starters. And then he says to the river to the sea, which is a term for getting rid of Israel.
Yeah,
genocide of Israel.
Yeah.
And then he says to abolish completely, get rid of them. Now that to me is we have hate law. We've talked about the hate law many times. If that's not hate law, I don't know what is.
Yeah. Well, he was already contacted before because he, by the police. I think he was out of the country, maybe in Iceland or somewhere. He came back and he was arrested by the police and questioned because he'd said that he supported Hamas. Now, it's illegal to support Hamas in the UK. If I said I support Hamas in this show, the police would be after me. I don't support Hamas. But that's the level of it. It's illegal even to state your support for that group. But what he is doing is tacitly doing that, basically saying that. He's saying he supports a terrorist organization against the state of Israel. And we've seen, of course, what's been going on in Israel, but and Palestine, and what we've got here is basically a terrorist organization that attacked civilians without provocation. They were left. The Israelis left Gaza in 2005. Left them. You do what you like in your own land. But what they did was they built terror tunnels, and a whole terrorist infrastructure to attack Israel because they don't believe in, they just don't like the Jews. That's what it comes down to.
Well, yeah, and the thing that I've been pulling up on and mentioning is, where's the condemnation from the likes of Humza and John Sweeney and some of the others within the SNP government? Where's the condemnation? Where are these people? Why aren't they coming out saying they don't speak for us? We condemn all genocide talk of Israel and
well, it's first of all,
because they do speak for them. That's why they're not saying they don't speak for us, because they do.
Well, first of all, it's not. Yeah, go ahead.
That shows you the state of the how big an issue this is. Because I know plenty of Jewish people who have contacted me not privately, and who friends have contacted me privately and said they are scared to go out onto the street in 2024 on their own. They are scared to go shopping. They are scared in the UK. They are frightened and want to leave Scotland because not only because of the anti-Semitic marches we see every weekend, but because the government are not protecting them.
Yeah, and I mean, this is the thing. It's not even part of their remit. So they could all just shut up and then say nothing about it. And then we'd be like, okay, this is what's, it's nothing to do with us. This is the thing. They need to, the problem with politicians are always like, oh, this is something to do with me. This wee thing that's happening in another part of the world. Oh, it's really something to do with me here. It's not. It's something to do with you guys at all. Just shut about it. You know, that's the thing.
But then we have Tommy Sheridan, who was on the stage on Saturday with Salmond and some of the others talking about independence to under 200 people. But he did a podcast, and I think you've got some of it there.
I've got the video here. Yeah,
I'm at the stage where I'm actually calling for the Irans of the world, for Hezbollah, for other players in the Middle East. I want them to attack Israel. I want them to militarily respond. I think Israel are a bunch of maniacal, murdering bastards. And words of condemnation mean fuck all to them now. For 9-10 months, we've condemned them. And it's not stopped a single Wayne getting torn to shreds.
Oh, it really hurts him. He's so concerned.
You can see the hatred.
Hezbollah, Syria. I want them to attack them because I think it's the only way they'll get stopped. The people are with Palestine. Governments are with the Israeli lobby, which is a very, very powerful lobby indeed.
There we go. It's the Jews what did it.
I think people like him should be forced to go to these countries.
You could hear the anger.
And live there, and then spend a little bit of time in Israel and decide what way of life.
I think it should be the other way around, actually. I think he should be forced to spend time with Hezbollah and then see
That's
how...
what I'm saying. Have to go there to Syria and Gaza and all these places.
I'm surprised his pager didn't go off in the middle of that interview.
I think he should be spending some time in jail for that kind of talk.
It's ridiculous.
You can tell... Sorry, you could tell with his voice the hatred he has for the Jewish people. You could tell by his voice. How is he allowed to say that? How is he allowed to say that when I got, I wasn't arrested, but I was questioned and asked to go to a police station for holding a Twitter space where there was nothing, there was no kind of talk like that. How can I be, that happened to me? Yet he's allowed to go onto a podcast and talk like that.
You're calling for terrorists. Terrorist attack.
Yeah.
You know, because of some Waynes in a far off country. Not mentioning, of course, that these people are religious fundamentalist fanatics
who are putting their own children in danger.
Exactly.
They're using them as human shields.
It's absolutely ridiculous. And I think anyone who's any inkling of the history of what's going on there or what's going on, again, perhaps, you know, it's a thing that comes with getting a bit older and seeing what's actually going on in the world, then, you know, you see, what the hell is, these people are just genuinely bad people. That's it. Yeah. Genuinely bad people want to kill other people. Someone said it the other day, if the Jews converted to Islam tomorrow, the conflict would be finished. They wouldn't have anything to do with it. Right? It's not about land or anything like that. No. That's exactly what it's about. They they're not, they have the temerity, the indecency to remain Jewish in what Islamic fundamentalists think is their land, right? Or their religious space, maybe a better way to put it. It's really shocking. And the fact that this is infected low-grade morons like Sheridan. And wasn't he the one who was, you know, the sex party guy? Wasn't he that one? Mm-hmm. Anyway, that's
people are saying if Palestine had swinging clubs, Tommy would be in there in a flash.
Well, you know, he should watch his mobile phone. That's all I say to that. Right. Right. Okay, where are we at? Okay, very good, Mark. It's terrible. This should be. It's definitely. I don't believe in hate crimes at all. I don't believe in that. But I think the society should be called out by society. That's a different matter.
Yeah, I think it's condemned by society.
I don't like this hate law either, but as it stands, we have one. And if you're gonna have one, and you're doing it, they're doing it politically. If you're against them, it's a hate law. If you're for them, it's not a hate law.
Oh, I know.
That's how ridiculous the law is, isn't it?
Yep.
Yeah, we need to get rid of that anyway. Right. Okay. Next up, Mary's going to talk about the Stinky Greens. Anyway, so we'll be back in a second for that.
Okay.
Right, you are up, and I've got your.
Thank you,
I've
Mark.
got
Have
your-
you got my comments
Yes,
and
I've got all your stuff.
my
It's coming
caption?
up here. Stinky Greens. Where's the Stinky Greens? All right, here we go. Right.
Okay, well, the Greens may no longer be in cahoots with the SNP in government, but they're still causing a stink. Basically, there's a bad smell follows them around wherever they go. This week, the Scottish Greens are at the centre of a cash for access scandal. They've been offering cosy lunches with government ministers and MSPs for hundreds of pounds, not thousands, but hundreds. They've been offering meetings with their most senior politicians like Harvey and Slater at party conferences, apparently for £700 a head.
Well, I wouldn't give them a fiver for that. They should pay us. They should. Come on.
Pay people to come, yeah. This has been going on for at least a year, including the period when the co-leaders Patrick Harvey and Lorna Slater were government ministers in the failed SNP coalition. But apparently it contravenes the Lobbying Scotland Act of 2016 because ministers and MSPs have to abide by strict rules. Who knew?
Right.
Because they have the power to influence government policy and how billions of pounds are spent.
Right.
I think most of us know that, but apparently they don't. So the former SNP minister, Fergus Ewing, has accused the Greens of rank hypocrisy and rule breaking.
Well, they're rank.
Yeah, he's saying Harvey recently slammed the Tories for taking money from businesses. In the lead up to the last general election, Harvey launched a plan for more transparency around political funding and claimed our politics should never be for sale.
Right, okay.
But we're for sale.
Right.
He said his party wanted tougher transparency and enforcement rules and accused the Tories and Labour of allowing wealthy donors too much influence.
Right.
Maybe he's just pissed off that they're not getting enough. They can't raise as much money.
Well, that's more usually what it's about.
So what do you think of this then?
A cosy lunch. A cosy lunch with Patrick Harvey for
and
only
Lorna Slater.
For only £700. My, indeed, what a bargain. That is access to the pinnacle of power in Scotland. Wow, that's...
Hypocrisy.
It's probably a meal deal from Tesco.
As Ron says here, that's an expensive veggie burgers.
Right.
Right.
Well, that was one thing. So this cash for access, which came up. And the other stink around them is about Ross Greer and why he was allowed to write a policy on tax into the Scottish budget when he wasn't even a minister. He was basically just a backbench MSP. So he was boasting to business leaders attending Holyrood's finance committee that he wrote the section in this year's budget proposing a return of a tax on large retailers selling alcohol and tobacco. For God's sake. It's pretty alarming that ministers are even considering a business rate surtax on grocery stores. This would be another Scotland-only tax that will make stores here pay the highest tax anywhere in the UK.
Yes, of course.
And, it opens the door to other sectors being taxed as well. It's like first they came for the supermarkets and the grocery store.
How does that go with a cost of living crisis?
Well, there's that for a start. Supermarkets are always obviously trying to cut costs and offer deals to people and whatever. But this would just be I don't know why they're choosing them, but they just want to put a big tax. Now, alcohol and tobacco are already heavily taxed.
Yeah, sure.
And people are paying a fortune. But this, all that's going to happen is the stores are going to put more tax on these items, right?
Yes.
And make them even more unaffordable. I guess that's what they want, is to make it completely unaffordable.
Right.
But it's just another tax. So you can imagine that supermarkets and grocery stores and what have you, some of them might just decide not to open in Scotland as well.
Yeah, they just seem to think that the private sector is just something to be squeezed. Right? Squeeze till the pips come. Squeak is the expression used to go. And they're really saying to businesses that Scotland's closed for business. Ross Greer was up with that, gloating about this flamingo land development that's taking place it was supposed to take place in Loch Lomond, and basically we've got tens of thousands of applications. Now, there's not even tens of thousands of people live close to it or who would actually be impacted. We've got a lot of out-of-towners and so on. And they're trying to build this thing here. I looked at I thought, it must be terrible, because it's going to be,
On the
this
bonny
pristine,
banks of
on the
Loch Lomond.
bonny banks, this pristine land, and building a theme park and all that. It's not. Well, it seems quite, from what I saw, looks fairly tasteful. But that's not the issue. The issue really is that it's just next to a council estate. That's next to that big development that's already there anyway. It's like, why are you thinking, what are you actually doing here? You just, the place is already developed. The place needs jobs. Why can you not do a bit more? So
Bring money into the local economy.
yeah, it's
guess.
really.
Yeah, I thought when there was all this resistance to it, I thought, it must be on that. When you look across Loch Lomond to the other side, the Balmaha side,
Yes.
and
Yeah,
all
that's
along
right,
that
yeah.
side is all beautiful. I thought
Yes.
it must be over there, but it's not. It's just
Yes.
on the
And
outskirts
it's not
of
actually.
Ballon.
This is another thing. Probably it's not actually called Flamingo Land. It's called Lomond Banks. That's the thing as
I
well.
like Flamingo.
Well, I know, but it's a bit weird, isn't it? That is the thing. The company's called Flamingo Land.
All right.
Anyway, but the point here is that, how are you going to get any business to take a risk in Scotland if people like, Gross Greer are going to pop their heads up at every point and say no at all, Mark?
It just shows you again that the standard of politicians we have in Holyrood. Ross Greer, he's got kicked out of university. He's got no life experience. I don't think he's ever had a job. I think if he went to apply for a job at McDonald's, he wouldn't get one. The lad is, and he's earning big money as a MSP.
Yeah, he's earning a fortune.
And the interesting thing was when you said that he's making tax policy for the government. Have the SNP conned us in some way in splitting with the Greens, but yet they're doing dodgy deals behind our backs to keep them happy? So they are basically still within government, but it was all show and tell.
Right.
You have to wonder. You have to wonder when they're still making policies up.
Yes, I think you're right there.
Well, I think some of it is that the SNP have got absolutely no ideas themselves.
Well,
so if the
we know
Green
that.
volunteer ideas, then they're willing to put them in. It's like,
Well,
can
that
somebody
didn't really
give us some
work out.
content?
It hasn't really worked out so well for them. Excuse me.
Well, the point is that a backbench MSP from a minor party should not be writing government policy.
Well, that is very
But we
true.
do have to budget.
Neither it should be a front. Neither should a front bench Green MP
true.
MSP be doing that. Sorry, Mark.
We do have the budget coming up. So is this if we allow you to do this, would you vote our budget through in December?
Of course. Yeah.
Well, they're already threatening. The Greens are already threatening. Of
course they're going to do that. But they'll always vote for them. They know what side their bread is buttered on. You scratch my back, I will scratch your back, etc. Maybe not think about that too much. All right, things you can do. Thanks, May. Very good section there. Things you can do right now to support the show. You can buy a T-shirt or a mug. We don't have a mug, but anyway, they're fantastic. You can get a Abolish Holyrood mug, Majority mug, Abolish Holyrood T-shirt here. There's a whole bunch of designs on our website. You can also subscribe to the show on YouTube. That is really good. If you haven't subscribed to the show already, please do so right now. It's a good time as any to just click that.
Can I just go back to the T-shirts and the mugs? It is coming up to Christmas, folks. Am I the first person to say that?
Right, okay.
So you could be getting your Christmas presents in early because there's bound to be a rush for these objects. You know?
Exactly.
So
that's right.
You don't want to be disappointed and miss out.
Annoy your enemies and delight your friends with these items. Anyway, you can tell your friends all about us, and that is very good because that's how we've grown so far. And you can also do all of the above, which makes us extremely happy and fulfilled. Underline exclamation mark. Coming up, it's the moment you have been waiting for. It's the highlight of the week. It is Zoomer of the Week.
Yay!
Okay. All right, so my Zoomer of the week is Neil. I'm not a nationalist, Mackay. Now, regular viewers will know that Mr. Mackay, his writer at large for the Herald, has been on here more than a few times, usually because he's been protesting that he's not a nationalist, hence his new middle name. I'm not a nationalist. But anyway, this time he's written an article. Where is this now? Let's see. He's written an article titled, that's not it. Okay. Oh, yes. Here we go. I couldn't watch Sam Sturgeon documentary. What's that? It turned my stomach. Yeah, it turned my stomach. Here we go. Try and get it. Actually, a bit wider. Okay. Oh, okay. Well, it turned our stomachs as well, I suppose. So there's a point. There's some point of agreement on there. But anyway, Mr. Mackay he starts it with some gushing praise. It could have been so different. Independence could have had real significance and purpose today. Indeed, the way politics has unfolded, independence could have stood as an alternative to the cycle of stagnation and failure that's taking us God knows where. But matters aren't different. Independence is traduced meaningless, and it's been battered into submission by the very people who championed it. The destroyers of independence are its torchbearers, specifically Nicola Sturgeon and Alex Salmond, and the cultish loyalists who still cleave to them. But, okay, right, fine, Neil, but here's the thing. It was you and journalists just like you that championed independence just as much. So you wrote and continued to write articles saying that the only way to escape is to separate instead of dealing with our issues head on. And I call this runawayism. Well, if we just run over that hill, everything will be better. Never mind that we'll lose everything. Over there is going to be better. Why? Because I told you so. What more reason do you need? Which seems to be the whole modus operandi of these people. So, taking that into consideration, his next sentence seems so appropriate, and I've changed the word politicians with grifters just to emphasize the point. In truth, independence has become a nauseating grift, shanghaied by failed grifters desperate for some end-of-career relevance and paydays, which keep them in costed comfort to which they've been so very accustomed. Indeed, Neil, journalists are exactly the same. And he continues, this time talking about Sturgeon and Salmond, but I wonder what else he could mean. They treated independence like a hijacked car. They stole it from the people who believed it. Independence became a means for the likes of Salmond and Sturgeon and certain journalists to carve out some lucrative niche. They turned it into a cult for their particular brand of true believers. So the problem here is that he takes no part in pushing his no blame in the part he played in pushing nationalism in the first place. Despite the disaster of the last 10 years, he still wants more. Despite the failure of Salmond and Sturgeon and Yousaf and Swinney, despite the majority of Scots being against it, he's just as much as a nationalist as they are. But he's still holding the matches and saying it wasn't me. He is this person who continues to beat the drum for independence while claiming he has nothing to do with it. It's just it's crazy Zoomerism. Look at yourself. You're the cause of this problem just as much as Sturgeon and Salmond. Then you're the one making the money from it every week, writing your articles in the paper and saying that it's not my fault, and selling dreams to gullible fools while you're picking up a nice salary from the Herald. F off. I mean, really, it's ridiculous. It drives me mad.
Oh, you've started your rant now.
This was Mary's suggestion, and look what it's got to.
Well, he got me on the first line with it could have been so different because really, it really wouldn't have been any different. Nothing would have been any different. I mean, these nationalists, it's inevitable that it's all going to come. Dreams are going to be in tatters.
Well, because it was, as someone said earlier on, it's just a dream. Of course, it's going to be in tatters. You're looking the other way. This is the same thing. It's just, can you not just say, we're all to blame? I would have more respect for all these people to say, look, we sold a dud. We were selling a dud, and can we not just go on and try and make Scotland a better place? That's it. But they're still out there. Swinney's like, we're going to have it in 10 years. We're going to do this. It's like zero credibility. Stop it. Stop it, please. Move on. It's over. Right. Okay. Mark.
Points for being impassioned.
I don't know if he's so Zoomerish, to be honest. But anyway, nonetheless, somewhat impassioned. Okay, right. Mark, you're going to be up next. I think yours is a really good one. Hold on.
Yes, my Zoom of the week, and it's that man, Humza Useless, and he's been at it again.
What's he up to now?
International stage, he wants to propose a international solution to break the impasse between Holyrood and Westminster on the constitutional issue. Useless wants a third party to mediate the competing ideologies of the Scottish government and the UK government. That's what he wants. I think he's getting mixed up with the Good Friday Agreement myself, and he thinks America should be mediating between the Scottish government and the UK government. Yet he doesn't understand, and he doesn't realise it was the Scottish people who said no. It's got nothing to do. Westminster said, have your vote, have it. They gave us the vote. It's not Westminster who said no, it was us, the Scottish people. So who is he going to mediate with? Is he going to mediate between the Scottish government and the people of Scotland? Because that's what it seems to be. The man is a complete and utter fool.
Yeah, so it's unbelievable.
Well, we always knew that, but but he keeps reminding us.
Well, actually, when you sent me the article, right, and I started reading it, I just kind of started skimming it, and I was like, all right, Humza Yousaf promises to to sort out this constitutional question. And I was like, okay, but between Hamas and the Israelis, and I was like, and then he was like, no, it's actually between what? Westminster and Holyrood. Like, okay, it's
bizarre.
It's incredible. It's incredible. What's he going to do? Mediate with Westminster and then come back to Scotland and say, well,
I think that shows you. That's what kind of shows you his mentality, though. Yeah. He wants to get this on this international stage. You talked about it last week, and maybe get this be relevant. Yes, right. Yeah. And to be relevant, he's going to say, "Oh, I've got a big idea. We can do this. Get the white helmets in, and
get Biden to mediate.
I know. Get the nations involved. Draw peacekeeping forces on the streets. I mean, that's kind of
just incredible. And it shows you the disrespect and bubble that these people are living in. It's disrespecting everyone that voted no to go over their heads and say we'll mediate with Westminster when Westminster said, well. Westminster could just turn around and say, well, actually, it's got nothing to do with us because we gave you the vote.
Yeah. No. Well, the one good thing that can be said from Cameron giving the referendum is that they lost and the issue should be settled. Right? It should be settled. So that's the thing. The Scots had the referendum. They shouldn't have had one in the first place. But now that we did have one, you got beat. You got actually 10 years ago. And can you not actually admit that you get beat?
I can't believe the way they just go on and on about it. I mean, it's the Scottish people have said no. They keep saying no, and yet they still keep going on and on.
As if it's
been
inevitable.
10 years already, and they're still doing it.
They want to say this inevitable. They can't believe that it's not inevitable. Now it's on to the young people. The Gwains are going to save us.
They've never get past the stage of absolute denial.
No, they're not.
They're still in denial.
No.
Nobody wants it.
And who knows what will happen in the Holyrood elections. They might get a last gasp. But certainly the only thing we can hope is that they do get a good beating in the Scottish elections, and they don't come back after that. Anyway, I think it's a very worthy contender, but
there's always Mary's.
So she'll be back in a second with her
Good one this week. Can you do my captions, please?
I will try my best to do it. Captions,
okay, yes. I've got a good one this week. Right, when it comes to ultimate Zoomerism, this is it. So it's a bit sad really, but my nomination for Zoomer of the Week is Scotland's Health Minister, Neil Gray. So last week I was talking about Scotland's terrible record of increasing deaths caused by alcohol, with the highest number of deaths since 2008. Well, I'm sorry, but I shouldn't have worried you all, because it seems that Neil Gray is on top of the situation.
Uh-oh.
Exactly. He's tackling the problem by commissioning experts to study the impact on alcohol deaths of banning alcohol-branded pint glasses, umbrellas, and T-shirts. Yes. I kid you not. So we're talking here about your drinking glasses with, say, the Tennent's logo on it, or a big golf umbrella with maybe Budweiser on it, or a T-shirt with maybe Guinness on the front. Neil suspects that just the sight of any of these logos makes us bolt for the nearest offie to satisfy our addiction. Now, I personally would be willing to bet my life right now on the fact that banning logos on merchandise is not going to save anyone from an untimely alcohol death. Because basically, if it worked like that, what makes drug addicts take drugs? I mean, I've never seen a heroin branded umbrella or a diazepam logo on a T-shirt. So
Mate,
it can't.
don't give them ideas.
It can't be the logos driving them. I'm
Right.
thinking it must be something else.
Right.
Anyway, so banning logos and making alcohol a wee bit pricier are two absolutely useless policies dreamed up by the bloated state-funded addiction sector that clearly has no understanding of what they're supposed to be doing. They've got no lived experience of dealing with alcohol addiction, either as victims, as a family, or carers, or people trying to rehabilitate these people. So Neil Gray is an absolute zoomer for spending taxpayer money on this nonsense and not getting his head on straight and dealing with these alcohol deaths in an effective way so that we don't have even more deaths next year.
It's bizarre. It's just.
I mean, really, it's like
just bizarre.
all the headlines about alcohol addiction, alcohol deaths that we had in the last couple of weeks. And then they come out with this absolute nonsense about banning logos, alcohol logos from merchandise.
No. No.
What does Mark Z think about this?
It's just quite stunning, isn't it? It's the chopping off the doors from Sturgeon type thing, isn't it? It's
the doors are school doors.
Yeah,
chop the bottoms off.
Yeah,
that'll solve COVID.
We're paying, what was it, 1.9 million for a year for these people to advisors to them, and that's the best they can come up with for 1.9 million. It's quite incredible, isn't it? To come up with that's the solution. Just I'd love it to be that easy, But this is a complex issue that needs serious.
Well, I think that
serious.
I mean, probably
a lot more work
they
than
want
that.
to make it go the way that the cigarette packets have, right? So the cigarette packets got all the pictures of the teeth. I saw one the other day. I don't often see packs of cigarettes these days, anyway. But you got in the glass, you're going to have all the brain rot, a picture of rotting brain and liver and all
The
that. You'd be like,
lungs,
oh, lovely,
lungs,
delicious.
I know how to sort the issue. I know
Right,
how we can sort this issue. It's quite simple. Start listening to Anne-Marie Ward
Well, that's true.
and people like that. If you do that and you take their advice and you go forward with that, this solution might not be solved completely, but it would be a lot better than what it is now. If you start listening to
they're not
people like
interested, though. I think they're
Agreed.
not actually interested.
No.
They're only interested in getting a headline. And I'm supposed to.
Is that the kind of headline they want?
Well,
though?
they don't mind. They don't care because people end up talking about that, and they go like, "Oh, we've done something. We did a focus group, and we talked to all our advisors, and they say that these evil companies, and that's part of it as well, are selling evil alcohol, and everyone must be punished for the actions of the addicts." It's like, no, we've got free will, most of us. And the people who are addicts don't necessarily. So let's just treat the addicts as addicts and look after them
Leave
as
the
much as
rest
we
of us.
can and leave the rest of us the hell alone.
Absolutely.
Very excellent section, but it's going to be up to we live in a Monty Python sketch. Not even as good as that. Mark Z.
Oh, I'm going to say. Oh,
yes, and you please feel free to vote for your own nomination. So
Well-
mine was Neil Mackay, yours was Humza, and
Yousaf.
Mary was
Neil Gray.
I'm gonna. I do apologise, but I'm gonna have to dismiss yours, Mark, because he's not really a Zoomer of the week. He's more.
wasn't really a Zoomer.
He's just a Zoomer. Full
Yeah,
stop. So
Dick of the week, maybe.
yeah.
Perhaps.
So
General Zoomer.
I'm gonna take that out of the equation.
For sure.
Mine, I do like mine, but again, Humza, he's just not relevant. So I think I'm gonna have to give it to. Well, in fairness, it is the best one. I'm gonna give it to Mary.
Oh, right.
Yay!
Well, that's true Zoomerism.
Thank
Definitely,
you,
there
Mark.
is the most Zoomerish of them
Yeah.
all there. I mean, it's just.
I mean, I shouldn't be cheering. It's really sad that that's what our health minister thinks is going to solve the alcohol death problems. But
Well, I mean, should we even have these? I mean, this is the thing. We shouldn't have them talking about this, and we shouldn't have them as ministers. I mean, think how much they pay £120,000 a year for this. Plus, think of all the hangers-on. There, millions of pounds just wasted on this absolute nonsense. Anyway, a worthy winner there, and somewhat a little
Thank
bit
you.
sad. Anyway, closing. We're so happy to have you with us every week on the show. Scotland's #1 politics chat. We'll see you again, same time, same place, next Wednesday. Now, thought for the week is this 10th anniversary is the last gasp. Tomorrow, Nationalists will wake up and we'll still have lost the referendum. And we will wake up with the UK intact. We must never, ever let the greedy, divisive, incompetent nationalism win again. And we must not let them lie about the past. Thank you to everyone who stopped. And we salute you all. Thank you. And thank you all for your support of the show. Huge thanks to Mark Zegfeld for being with us tonight and giving his insight. And, of course, huge thanks to Mary as
Thank
well.
you. Thank you, everyone, for your comments.
And we will see you, as said, we will see you again next week. Thank you all and take care.
Good night.
Good night.
Enjoy the good weather.